Wholeness family. Uh, Yesterday, we each addressed the question put forth by Nasik Aharone that he termed the prophetic question. And I'm just going to read what it is and put forth what it is that Nasik wanted us to consider at this moment. The prophetic question starts off by saying, we all have come to an agreement and identified melanin as the source of all life and power. The question is, what is our prophetic perception of how to utilize this melanin power to bring an end to the Western cultural idea of domination and to bring Western culture to its destruction? The last part of the request is to give our previous perception of how the Western world is to meet their final destruction. This is just for us to measure where the online teachings have taken us, opposed to where we all were prior to these teachings. This is merely for our records. So, this was the prophetic question that was put forth again by Nasik, and the purpose being to gauge where we are since we began this process weeks ago. For many of us, it's been a shorter time. We understand that. But as I stated yesterday, Nasik, as I listened to the responses, I was very encouraged and inspired because many of the people that are participating in these daily sessions are really internalizing the information and taking it to heart, and it's positively affecting their alignment with the prophetic framework and the prophetic blueprint which our ancestors have established and which we've been communicating over these many weeks.
Okay.
It was very encouraging to me to hear uh, a number of the responses corresponding to the, again, prophetic framework and the prophetic blueprint that we are uh, that we consistently put forth uh, and um, and use as a track or a framework for everything that we teach, a guide, a blueprint, a template for everything that we bring forth in these sessions. Uh, Especially those responses that had to do with the energetic nature of this all, because that is going to really um, tell the tale. And that perspective on the energetic nature is going to, when properly understood and comprehended, is going to allow us to uh, acknowledge these energies that are emerging, that are ascending at this point, to acknowledge them, to correctly identify them, and recognize them as they manifest. And this is going to be the key to our um, activating the power that is resident and innate within all of us. So, and this was extremely encouraging. Um, Also, I recall yesterday, and I wrote it down, that everyone, or I can't say everyone, but most of us realize that this is a journey of increasing awareness. And what we're doing is we are following the clues and and which are the symbols, and making ourselves familiar more and more every day with these symbols, and familiarizing ourselves with the allegories that are revealed to us in the scriptures and in other accounts and tales of um, the events in history of our ancient ancestors. That's what all this is all about. And we all understand that, again, that this is a journey of increasing awareness. So at this point, Nasik,
Uh-huh.
there is no definitive picture as to the exact details of how this is going to turn out. I want to make that statement right now. But we do have a general blueprint and template. So I'm saying that to say, although we can't say exactly what it is that it is going to be in terms of detail, based on our history, we can definitely say what it is not going to be. Are you all with me?
Yeah, I think so.
Because you stated as much in the question where you said that we were to consider our previous perceptions, right?
Right.
So that indicates that something is emerging that is different from what it is that we thought it would be.
If I may, I was referring to what we had been taught without saying it, in terms of, this war of Gog and Magog, and
Correct.
that, that's
Right.
without saying it, but that's what I was alluding to.
Correct. I'm with you. I'm with you. So we the point is that what is emerging is different from what it is that we have all been programmed to expect, that we've all been trained to believe. Correct.
Correct.
So we know.
Shalom,
Hey, shalom. So
Shalika.
that's all right. So,
When you're finished, I wanted to add something.
okay, go ahead. You can add it now.
Okay, what came to me through last evening was I kept thinking about Abba asked about us prophetic, but I believe it will be like what it took me back to the plagues of Egypt during the time of Moshe, and the Israelites being delivered out of that land,
Hmm.
that the plagues were coming, and the worst thing that happened was the death of the firstborn of everything, of everybody in Egypt that did not have the protection of the seal over their doorpost. So I said it's going to be much worse than that. It's catastrophic. And you know what gave me that idea? The last tragedy that happened in Florida. And
Absolutely.
I says now it's touched those people and the other tragedies that have happened, senseless tragedies, and they're still talking about guns and they're having all these debates about the guns. I said it's like so crazy to me because I'm saying there shouldn't even be any guns. Period. Guns were created to kill, and us being vegan, we don't think about. We're not killing animals. We're trying to return to a time of total peace, between us and the animals. So we don't kill anything. Now they're talking about, and the crazy person in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue talking about arming the teachers with guns, and so many people are even against that, even though they're not in this knowledge at all. But just maybe what they call common sense, I don't know, doesn't make sense, because so many things have been added and come into my hearing. But I'll just stop there. That's what I really, thought about. I thought about the plagues of Eden. I said, well, this is going to be more catastrophic than that. And still, I feel that we are protected because we are going to cause it.
Okay. Well, I want to deal with in two ways with what you just stated. I'll start with the last statement that you made. You said it doesn't make any sense, but it actually does make sense, because we have to keep in mind and to make the distinction between us and them. The individuals that are in charge of this country, that are running the country and the world by extension, this is the aberrant man. And this is represented by Esau. All right? That's somebody that is genetically predisposed to not just violence, but genocide in general. This is what has categorized the presence of the aberrant man throughout the world and throughout his history. If you recall in the scriptures, when it was prophetically mandated what the offspring of Esau would be about in the last days, he was given a sword. This is a weapon. It is not the same sword that we are given. Our sword and our weapons are spiritual. So it does make sense. It does follow that this issue with guns and weapons are in the forefront. We must know our history. And the primary purpose for the weapons that are in the forefront now is not hunting. It's not killing animals. It is to kill man, because that is how they got this country from our ancient indigenous ancestors, through homicidal mayhem and violence and murder. And this is how they keep they keep and maintain the country. Esau makes his living and carves out his existence with a sword, with weapons, and with violence. And when we understand our history, when we were emancipated, that corresponded almost exactly with the invention and the proliferation of the handgun. The handgun is not for hunting animals. It was for hunting our ancestors. And when you see that the emergence of the NRA, National Rifle Association, corresponded almost to the day with the creation of what's called the Ku Klux Klan, you understand how this makes sense. And the Ku Klux Klan eventually turned into the patrolmen, the police. So it makes sense that the police are in the forefront of the news as well, in terms of violence against melanated people. So that makes sense. The other uh, the other part of it, in terms of the exodus from Israel and the plagues on Egypt, was spot on. In the Jacob and Esau, Cain and Abel, who was the firstborn? Cain and Esau, correct?
Yeah.
So again, this is an allegory. And what protected the children of Israel specifically? Does anybody recall? No one recalls the Exodus story.
What story?
The story of the Exodus and the plagues of Egypt. What protected the children of Israel? What did they have to do to protect themselves from the
blood of the lamb?
Pardon me?
Blood of the lamb on the doorpost? You talking about that?
Blood. The blood protected them. This all has to do with genetics. Again, this is the same theme of dominant traits and recessive traits. All right? It is the same allegorical theme. And just that connects us with the prophetic blueprint that the ultimate attack is going to be on the firstborn. Not literally, but referring to those that exhibit the recessive traits, recessive genetic traits, as well as the recessive genetic behavior. Makes sense?
Yeah, yeah.
We all here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey.
All right. So, again, when we begin to look at the prophetic blueprint and the prophetic layout, we can look at our history, like the sister suggested. We can look at the history from the scriptural perspective and understand that to understand what it's not going to be. Now, let me ask people a question. Let's use the Exodus as a um, template. Did Moses negotiate the children of Israel's release from captivity?
No.
No. Nope.
It started out as a negotiation, correct, right?
Hey.
Let my people go.
But what did it end in? It ended in war and the death of the firstborn, correct?
Correct.
Hey.
So we know that this is not that the ultimate separation in terms of the prophetic blueprint is not going to be negotiated. When you look at the Black Panther movie again, and we'll use that as another example, was Killmonger a negotiator?
No. Not no.
But was T'Challa was he advocating negotiation?
Okay.
Absolutely. Last scene, you saw him at the UN, which they are setting him up for the sequel, for the okie doke.
Yeah.
Because the question was asked of him, what do you have for us? Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
What he's going to do is barter with an individual that is on record for demonstrating genocidal destruction all throughout this planet. that is on record for breaking every negotiated treaty with us and with our ancestors that they have ever made. So when we look at the two types represented by Killmonger and T'Challa, we can look at our recent history and characters, players in this ongoing scenario that existed at the same time. One represented Killmonger and his approach, and the other represented T'Challa, Black Panther, and his approach. All we have to do is go back to the 60s and look at what Malcolm X represented and his position,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
what Martin Luther King Jr. represented
Mm-hmm.
in his position. Most of us now accept and are influenced very heavily by the approach of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
We have been programmed and entrained in that image. And we are predisposed to negotiating our freedom. Oppressors do not negotiate. And when we look at just the recent history, when Martin Luther King had basically won the victory, to get this aberrant man to include us in the Constitution. He was sitting there, him and Andrew Young.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew Young saw that he was very pensive and quiet on the eve of this victory. And he said, you know, what's wrong? We've gotten everything that we've asked for. And Martin Luther King looked at him and said, brother, I think we have integrated ourselves into a burning house.
Burning house. Yeah.
Yes.
Was he right?
Yes.
Was he correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, he was
Absolutely.
correct.
And everything that was achieved is now being what? Reversed.
Mm-hmm.
It was not advanced by Barack Obama, even. And it is definitely being reversed now. And there's been an effort to reverse it. So when we look at the movie, when we look at the film, we see these two approaches. And ultimately, Killmonger and T'Challa are two sides to the same coin. Two approaches to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Are you all with me?
Okay.
Killmonger said, by any means necessary. But T'Challa, representing the what I call the Black Boule, wants to negotiate with the oppressor. And we're going
Mm-hmm.
to find out, Malkiel, if you're familiar with the Black Panther myth, that if they do the second sequel, watch what I tell you, that decision to go before the UN and to trade and barter information, in other words, to get up his, it's going to backfire on him.
Mm.
And he is going to personally lose his power as Black Panther. That's why his sister is going to have to become, his younger sister is going to have to
Mm-hmm.
become Black Panther. And I'll bet you one thing too, that they're going to have to resurrect Killmonger.
That's exactly what I thought.
And he's going to, you watch what I tell you. Cousin, I am sorry. You were right.
Mm-hmm. I
And
got
they
you.
are going to have to fight to get that power back and regain control. So this all leads into our understanding of the prophetic blueprint, because it cannot be that we will align with an energy
Right.
that is going to give us super negotiating powers.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Hey,
May
Right.
I
Jai,
say something?
Huh?
I
May
have
I
a
say something?
question, but I'll let the sister go before me. I'll hold mine and come after her.
Shalom, this is Yetiba.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to say when I watched the movie, what I got out of it was the feminine energy. I understand we don't look at it in a physical form. However, looking at the film, there were the females. And what I recognized was that T'Challa did not have men guarding him. He had women
Absolutely.
guarding him. And he had women who revived him.
Absolutely.
And they used the earth to revive him.
Absolutely.
And throughout that whole scene, when I saw the sister, when she stood in front of the rhino,
Right.
it was like, to me, that was the feminine energy of her halting, as well as the rhino, the animal, but as
Correct.
well as the brother. When the brother said to her, you know, would you kill me? And she stated, well, for Wakanda. But he bowed to her. And I did not look at that as a form of submission, but him acknowledging his feminine energy
That's correct.
in doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So even in listening to you speak about when he's going to realize that his oppressors aren't there to assist, but they're going to try to, you know, take over, and he's going to have to revive Killmonger. But it's going to be the feminine energy that's going to balance him, and that they're going to seek out in order to achieve what they've had to achieve,
Right.
especially since it was the feminine energy that caused this 400 years ago.
Right. Absolutely. And very accurate. And but I would like to say that Killmonger represents the feminine energy as being the seed of the woman. The seed of the woman. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And if you look at those warriors, the representation of the feminine energy, Malkiel, were they negotiators or were they warriors?
You're straight up warriors.
Okay. All right, Nasik.
You know, I always come with these questions that you may not be able to answer, but it come to me. This whole prophetic cycle of time, the question is tied to, do we see the movie as being a part of the prophetic cycle? And then you mentioned about the sequel or what they were, that means it's going to be some time involved for them to make another movie. It took 4 years in the making of this one, you know, so we're looking at a cycle of time for these things to reveal themselves. Are we saying then that possibly that the movie is playing a prophetic role and it have to run this sequential of time in order for the resurrection to take place, and you know, to bring all this into before, you know, a greater destruction begin to start to come upon, you understand, the Western idea, cultural idea? That's the question.
Right. Well, I agree totally that the movie is both a response to what it is that we are causing. They have anticipated this, Nasik. This is not something that this has been in the works for centuries. For centuries. And this is what I do when I look at the Black Panther myth. I go all the way back, and you know, this began with the invention of race in the modern world. And once you
Yeah.
trace those origins, you understand that, and again, the invention of race was in response to us, to our inevitable rise. So these things have been what? Used as checks to, to hinder what they understand is coming prophetically. The problem is we have not understood the prophetic blueprint as we should have, and secondly, and most importantly, we have not understood our power in bringing these things forth in a very deliberate way. So in answer to the first question, the movie, I would say, is prophetic. It is prophetic, but not in the way that we might think. It is a response to who and what it is we are. They could not have anticipated the energy that this thing has generated. They put it out there for a purpose, as a check. This is why Killmonger was killed. Killmonger is really, once you understand the template of what is called the monomyth or the hero's journey, it is the hero that crosses the water to go on an adventure, to win a prize, and then what? Return home. It was Killmonger. Remember, T'Challa, the Black Panther, crossed the water. For a purpose? He was supposed to bring a prize home. Did he bring the prize home? I'm asking. Did he bring the prize home?
No.
Absolutely not. Neither did his father.
Right.
Who brought the prize across the water?
Killmonger.
And then won a decisive victory. But in the monomyth of the hero, he was to be allowed to return back home. But they didn't allow him to transform and return back home. They killed him. So again, that was the reversal of the ritual. But again, they did not understand the power of this movie. They're almost forced to do a sequel. And they're going to have to bring back Killmonger. Why? He was one of the most powerful and popular characters in that. So, in response to your other question, they have known since before 2015 that Chadwick Boseman, the one that played T'Challa, the Black Panther, would play Black Panther. So
they knew this since 2015.
They knew it since 2015. I have the article.
Okay.
They knew it since 2015. So these things are never just, again, they're never just done, piece by piece. They can't predict the future, but they have all of this in the works, and various scenarios and scripts written. And you can be sure it is not going to be something that empowers us. Our response and our attention has empowered that film. So I think I hope I've answered your question. I don't.
Yeah, you answered it. Okay. One other point to add to that while we're here. When you use the word ritual, most of you probably don't know, but Eitai, I'm sure you know, and some of the other brothers may know. No disrespect to the sisters, it's just that we as brothers stayed in the scripture more than the sisters. But going back to Cain and Abel, because there was a controversy there about that being a ritual. You know, so are we saying that this is like a continuation of an ancient cultural idea that was a part of a revelation or a part of a continued revelation and prophetic manifestation of these two brothers, you know, one killing the other?
No, when I talk about ritual, what I'm actually talking about is something that directly affects, in this sense, I'm talking about something that directly has to do with comic books and images specifically. When I if you look at the screen, a cartoon is an image drawn on heavy paper or carton paper. So they just add cartoon. An image, just like our forefathers used to draw images on the wall, correct?
Right.
A cartoon is an expansion of that. It is drawn on heavy paper, correct?
Gotcha.
Called carton paper. When you expand that out, a stereotype is a method of printing from a plate. So you move from writing on the wall to writing on this heavy paper, drawing these images, to carving or engraving the images on a plate. This relates to the Bible that's called a carved image. All right.
Okay.
It is a hieroglyph. Someone has their microphone open and we get a lot of interference. So if you could check your mute buttons. So the next step
Eitai.
of transcribing, let me finish. The next step of transcribing these images is to put them on a printing plate for mass production. That is called a stereotype. The stereotype, the figurative meaning of stereotype is an image perpetuated without change. Now, this gets us, Nasik, to the movies and the film industries, how Black people were always stereotyped in these
Right.
general images. So when I talk about a ritual, I'm talking about the stereotypical images of Killmonger as being the brute nigger, and T'Challa being another image of the nice, safe, harmless Negro, the ones that white folks don't have to worry about. These are the rituals that are being perpetuated. Who were white people more afraid of? Malcolm X and his philosophy, or Dr. Martin Luther King and his philosophy?
Malcolm X.
Absolutely. He represented the brute. And this is how the media portrayed him, as being the dangerous brute nigger that is violent. So when I talk about ritual,
That's clear.
yeah,
That's
I'm
clear.
talking about stereotypes, because the synonym for ritual is stereotype. So it's the same word. So
Gotcha.
as it uh, as it relates to us, we have always been stereotyped in comics, and it's always been a racist, white supremacist attempt that is behind it. And we cannot leave that out when we look at comic books brought to live film, especially the Marvel comics. If you look on the end here, this is the Cold Black series that Merry Melodies had out there for a while, that
Right.
included all of the stereotypical images of people. This is Bugs Bunny. Merry Melodies puts it out. Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, Porky Pig. You see out of that center of concentric circles, you usually see Porky Pig stick his head out with the words, "That's all, folks."
Right.
But we're not aware of the racist origins and the white supremacist origins of these comic books and of these stereotypical images and rituals. This is why, Nasik, I dealt with the myth, because most of us are just looking at the movie and drawing conclusions. But if you don't understand history and the myth of comics, you understand the movie. Go ahead.
Second.
Hello?
Hold on for a second. I want to ask some questions. And I want you and Nasik both, somebody to answer my question. Now, we've been talking that the feminine energy is the primary energy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, and we're talking about Killmonger. Now, we all know that we're in a new energy age. Is that correct? Then if we're going to utilize Killmonger, then where is the primary feminine energy going to be?
Okay, I'm going to answer that, but I answered it before. And I'm answering,
what?
And let me continue, because I understand exactly what you're saying. I answered it before, and I'm going to answer it now. Everybody on the call, if they were paying attention, they heard me say this several times, that the one thing that you don't see in Killmonger's character, you see his father, you see that his brother killed his father. So who raised him? They didn't. This is my whole point. They didn't show his mother.
I saw the father.
Let me finish, because I do understand your question, and I'm going to address it and answer it. The very fact that they never showed his mother classifies her as the hidden feminine. So it makes him the seed of woman that was talked about way back there in the Genesis. He represents the whole, holistic, healthy, healed offspring. Allow me to finish. I understand your question, but allow me to finish the thought. I'm addressing your question. Please allow me to finish the thought. And consider what I'm saying. Because the film writers left out his mother, it connects him with the hidden divine feminine. That's all we've been talking about since we've gotten on here. The patriarchal system that what? Hides the divine feminine. It is nothing different in this movie.
Hey, but Eitai, the prophetic, the Genesis, are we in the same energy cycle? Is today the same energy cycle as Genesis? Or are we in a whole new energy cycle now? That's what I want to understand, because we seem to be bringing prophecy and everything into this energy cycle.
the Genesis, now you're talking about two different things now. I'm not addressing an energy cycle. I'm addressing, and your first question had to do with the prophetic framework and the blueprint. What I'm talking about is the prophetic framework, what we've been saying from the beginning, that it was established in the Genesis with the statement that there would be enmity between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. You got to go back and look over your notes, because this is what we've been saying from the beginning. So the seed of the woman in the end time would have to be identified. And in the movie, it is identified by Killmonger in the same way that in the New Testament, the seed of woman is identified in the Jesus character at the beginning of the so-called New Testament Gospels as the single son of the virgin woman, or the hidden divine feminine, and it's the same representation as is in the book of the Revelation, as the child being born from the woman. Same thing, Kalai, but you have to go back
I
and
understand,
synthesize it yourself.
Eitai. I understand that quite well, but I'm still asking, is this the same energy cycle that we're in now that we was in Genesis, or the seed of the woman? Or have we checked the energy cycle?
I never talked
That's what
brother. I
and
never talked about the energy cycle, and I'm not addressing the energy cycle. Again,
how can we not address the energy cycle? And neuromelon is energy.
bruh,
You know what I'm saying?
brother, the question was that I'm addressing. The question that I'm addressing was the question that Nasik put forth, and it was it was our understanding of the prophetic framework and the prophetic blueprint as it relates to melanin.
If we ain't in the same cycle, then how can we keep going back and pulling up?
Okay, so
Yes.
yeah, I think I'm kind of understanding or feeling what those Kalai is speaking on, in a sense, and that is he, like myself, want to get this done. So, and us bringing up the energy, are we going to discuss that at a later time? And you're just addressing right now what Nasik asked of us.
That is what we started yesterday off as. The question was put forth.
Okay.
What I started out by saying, I addressed the energy, the aspect of energy, and what energy that we had to align with. What I'm talking about now, relative to the seed of the woman that is represented in Genesis, and the seed and the child that was produced by the woman in the book of Revelation, that is the prophetic framework. Two different things. I'm not talking about I didn't mention any energy cycles. I'm talking about the prophetic framework. I'm assuming that was the question. Was that it, or am I wrong? Now, see, was that the initial question?
Well, no, the initial question had to do with the prophetic framework, and the idea of the energy is a whole nother something in respect to the framework.
That's absolutely correct. But we have to understand. We have to understand the framework. This is why we're doing it before we get to the energy.
Mm-hmm.
We must understand the prophetic framework and connect that together before we even talk about the energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's in fact what I was saying, that you're going to do that at a later time. We're anxious, so please bear with us, senior, for being anxious in that, because that was in the back of my mind too. But I'm following you, and I said at a later time, in the future, after we grasp this totally.
And this is the problem. We have not all grasped this, and this was when we go back to the question that Nasik asked, the prophetic question. I'm going to read it again. We all have come to an agreement, and I identified melanin as the source of all life and power. We all agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
The question was, what is our prophetic perception of how to utilize this melanin power to bring an end to Western cultural idea of domination to its destruction? So our prophetic perception is what we're dealing with. That is the first part of the question. Am I correct or am I incorrect?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Then Nasi goes on. The last part of the request is to give your previous perception of how the Western world is to meet their final destruction. Did I address that? I'm just asking.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This is just for us to measure where the online teachings have taken us. This is the purpose now, as opposed to where we all were prior to the teachings. At this point, family, what I'm doing is addressing the prophetic framework.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a track to run on.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a framework in order for what? The power to manifest. This is the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is no agreement with the prophetic framework and blueprint, this is what the ancestors have set out, so that we know precisely how to align with the energy. The energy is emerging right now. But we have to align ourselves with it. Let me make a statement, because this is going to address my approach. And this is what I said yesterday. That dark energy, we'll address the energy aspect now. Dark energy and dark matter is not homogeneous. It is not one thing. Does everybody remember me saying this yesterday? Does anyone remember me saying this yesterday and making this statement? I'll make it again.
Okay, show us.
I'll repeat. Dark energy and dark matter is not homogeneous. It is not just one thing as it manifests. It is multifaceted, it is multidimensional, and it doesn't manifest as just one thing or in just one way. Does anybody disagree with that?
No, and also you're talking about it don't have no morals too, right?
Doesn't have any morality.
Morals. Mm-hmm.
Just like electricity doesn't have morality.
Gave examples. Yeah.
And I gave examples. Do you remember?
Right. Okay.
Then I said, and I'm glad I got it up, I went to Ecclesiastes 3. So we'll depart from establishing the framework and address now how this energy is going to manifest. Dark energy, dark matter, starts out as one thing. It does not manifest as just one thing. It manifests as different things. It is multifaceted, multidimensional, does not manifest as just one thing in just one way. Then I went to Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter. And I made the statement that it manifests in 3 general ways. G-O-D. Everybody remember me saying this, that it is generative, meaning that it is creative. It is operative, meaning that it is substantive, and it is destructive. Anybody remember me saying that?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, that's generative.
Mm-hmm.
A time to die, that is destructive.
Mm-hmm.
A time to plant, and you remember I said to water and cultivate, that is operative, or the maintenance aspect of it, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. Then I went on to say that in the spring time is when you plant, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That is generative. During the intervening time of summer, that's where things grow and that you have the harvest, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then the fall and the winter is the time of destruction. And an individual will look foolish in the dead of winter, what? Planting something.
Right.
So I said that to say that at the beginning of cycles, dark energy and dark matter manifest what? As generative. In the intervening period, it transitions and manifests as what? Operative, and something that is that has the that is sustained, that will sustain, operate, and maintain, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the cycle, it would be what? Destructive. Are we at the beginning of a cycle or the end of a cycle?
End of a cycle.
So the question the question would answer itself if we have a proper understanding of times, seasons, and cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So we wouldn't expect something that is creative at the end of a cycle. It would have to be what? G-O-D. At the end of the cycle, it wouldn't be creative or generative. It would be what?
Destructive.
Destructive. Does Killmonger represent the destructive energy?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
self-evident.
Yes.
It's self-evident. We shouldn't have to argue about these things. We just have to have a basic understanding of where we are at in a cycle. When we're talking about the Genesis, we're talking about what? A creative energy, a creative manifestation of melanin. When we are talking about the intervening period, we are talking about the operative manifestation of melanin. And we are currently at what? The end of a cycle. So our expectation should be what? The destructive aspect of melanin.
Mm-hmm.
It either makes sense or it doesn't. But we're talking about the prophetic framework. And the prophetic framework is going to eventually what? Take us from the beginning of a generative cycle to the operative cycle, which is intermediate to the destructive cycle. So if you have a problem with me emphasizing Killmonger as the energy, the destructive energy, representing the destructive energy that is going to be at the end, you don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with the information. And the manifestation, the different manifestations, the three basic manifestations of melanin throughout time cycles.
May I ask a simple question?
Correct. Go ahead.
The D can stand for destruction. Could it not equally stand for disintegration and decay? If that is true.
Same thing.
Then, well, the one of the major writers we study is Fridtjof Capra's Turning Point. He quotes the I Ching. He says, after a time of decay comes the turning point. So I think that sheds a slightly brighter light on the various potentials. Because if you interchange disintegration and decay for destruction, then you consider power versus force. How will we add to the unfolding of the enfolded idea? What are we called upon to do? Perhaps it's hastening the destruction and the decay, but it's less likely that we will use force, more likely that we will use power.
I'm not at all talking about force when I talk about destruction.
Okay.
This is
right. So then, to me, Killmonger represents force. That's more so than either decay and disintegration.
Well,
and then the two of them are at the turning point.
I think we're mixing metaphors. Let's look at the cycle in terms of two half circles. Let's break it down like that. From the generative cycle, you begin the upward movement clockwise, up on, and just follow me, on the left side of the circle. All right, to the apex, to the top of the circle. That is the generative cycle, and it reaches its apex at a particular point in time. Can we see that? Moving clockwise rather, up one side of a circle, one arc of a circle. Then at the apex, you enter into, and to me, this is just intuitive, that you would enter into not an ascending cycle, but a descending cycle that would take you into a cycle of not ascension and growth, but a cycle of disintegration, ending in destruction, and then the beginning of a new cycle. See, what we want to do is rush to a new cycle, but disintegration and destruction are not the same thing. When you understand the alchemical process, that the process of what they call nigredo, or the descent into darkness, is disintegration. And there's a term called calcination, which reduces something to its elemental or organic form. That is what we talk about as destruction. So, I think that we have not properly decoded the Killmonger character, because it is clear, at least to me, that he represents this destructive force. whether you want to call it the end of the definitive end of a disintegration cycle, or whatever we're confusing the terms destruction with force. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the power of destruction. There is such a thing. There is such a thing. And this is the question exactly that Nasik talked about, that he addressed. The destruction of what? The former age, the former oppressive system. Did I get that wrong, Nasik?
No, that's correct. That's correct.
So I think because of our programming, we have a problem with destruction. And we have to go back and look at that again, according to everything that we've been talking about.
Eitai, may I think, and I go back to the programming as you were saying, see, everybody have had these teachers and they have been taught that everything was going to conclude with a war. And when you hear war, you really think about, and they've showed various, you know, I remember they used to have something, Nostradamus, the Western world and Russia, and, you know, and when that was the Eastern Bloc then. And no longer Russia is a part of the Eastern Bloc. Ain't no Eastern Bloc like that. It was called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the Warsaw Pact. Now you see all these nations come together now. So if your understanding have not evolved out of the belief that it was going to be a physical war, and I mean that's what everybody keep talking about. It's going to be a physical. And that's the whole. They can't fathom any other way than it being a physical war.
And this is not,
can't figure destruction outside of a physical war, and that's incorrect.
You're absolutely correct. And they keep equating these things with things like force and use of weapons. I'm careful with saying that I'm not advocating arming ourselves with weapons. This is where the disconnect is happening. And the force. I'm talking about aligning ourselves with destructive power. It only makes sense. It only makes sense to me that if our goal is let me read what you said, so I'm not taking you out of context. If our goal is to bring an end to the Western cultural idea of domination and its destruction, then our mental process and we would have to vibrate at the frequency of what? Destruction, not creation. Not operation or sustainability, not that thought, but the thought of destruction. We have a real problem with that. But if destruction is the goal, let me ask you all, what else would you vibrate to? What else what frequency, what channel would you tune into in terms of energy?
It ain't no other, but again, Eitai, see, this whole thing about, I use the word, I purposely use the word cultural war, you know, cultural, you know, idea, because it's the idea that got everybody all messed up now.
Right.
And so don't deal with the idea, the concept that everybody's in conception with, what they are manifesting, then it will just continue. So I was careful to make sure that I said that, because that's what has to be destroyed.
This is where the
disconnect is happening. I don't see how anybody got a problem with that.
This is where the disconnect is happening. If we look carefully, even at the myth of the Black Panther as it relates to Killmonger, what were the weapons made of? Vibranium, which is melanin.
Right.
We're we're having a difficult time, and I heard it yesterday and I'm hearing it today. We're having a difficult time syncretizing the myth with the actual energetic reality that is coming upon, that is ascending now. I am not advocating, I'm going to say this again, the use of weapons, but I am advocating the destructive nature of melanin, of dark energy and dark matter. Now, if we're not in agreement,
ultimate weapon.
if we're not in agreement that melanin has destructive power and destructive energy, then we're not in agreement. I believe that it has. It must have it. Because if it's generative, it would have to be destructive.
Right.
Well,
Can I give an example of the destructive?
Certainly.
That we're probably overlooking.
Oh, go right
ahead. Hurricane Harvey is an example of that. Those wildfires in California that scorch, I mean, million acres.
I agree.
Of land is part of the destructive melanin.
Well, I mean, we used to say all the time, Malkiel. I remember in the kingdom, we would quote this scripture: "I will not meet you as a man."
As a man, exactly.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
But
let me give a couple of examples of the destructive. Allow me to give two scriptural references of the destructive.
Let me finish my conversation with Malkiel first, and go right ahead. When it was talking about that, Malkiel, when we quoted that when we talking about that energy, I will not meet you as a man negotiating with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Or were we talking about it in terms of destructive power?
Right. Destructive power.
Go right ahead, Doug.
And I'll make a comment about that too, because I see, I don't have any disagreement with your analysis. I just think that there are some nuances that can be added to the analysis, such as young Pharaoh did. And I think he equated the two as balanced together, both characters. And it's interesting that two Black Panthers fought. So he equated the two Black Panthers as representing us, the two together. And you already said they're going to bring the other one back. So it sounds very much like that. But two examples of destruction. One, when the king had, well, I can't recall the scripture. I can recall it in a little while. But let's start with the first story. In Judges, the story of Gideon, they were completely outnumbered, but 300 people stood in the midst of the army, and the army slayed themselves. And a similar thing happened in the other Jehoshaphat, King Jehoshaphat. There was a greatly outnumbered army, but they marched towards the army, and the army slew themselves. So both of those are examples of destruction, but I think very clear examples of the power of the melanated force creating the destruction of enemy forces. And I think it's very, very clear. There's no shading, no idea that when a person is sending out aircraft with arms, that they're really doing something that has power rather than force. It represented force. What Killmonger wanted to do was use force, use the force of arms. Even though he had the melanin available, he didn't yet know how to do it. And I think when he comes back and the two of them are united, then they'll have the solution.
Well, I agree absolutely with what you said in terms of the scripture references. But this is what Malkiel had brought up in terms of the shootings and the wildfires, and that they're destroying themselves with their own sword. We agree on that. But again, I'm going to have to disagree with your categorizing Killmonger as using force in there. You have to understand that within the narrative, it had to tell the story in a certain way. But if you recognize the symbols of the nectar of the lotus flower, which they took internally, was the neuromelanin that was internalized. Now, let me ask you a question. Who created the weaponry in Wakanda? Was it Killmonger, or was it T'Challa and his sister and those people that created the weapons? See, that's another.
It's obvious the weapons. You asked me a question. It's obvious that the weapons already exist, and I don't think. I mean, we have enough. We have enough agreement to go forward. I didn't mean to get into back and forth. So don't feel that you have.
Since you brought it up, let me finish. I just want to finish it out, and I want to emphasize what I said. Just as the purple lotus flower represents melanin, the weapons that are made out of vibranium, they represent melanin as well, but just in a weaponized form, a destructive form, just symbolically representing the destructive element, to me, of melanin. I'm not hung up on the fact that they are weapons or that they appear in the form of the nectar internally. To me, it's the same thing. And this is where I think we're real sensitive to weapons. I'm not advocating picking up weapons at all.
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The wireless customer you called is not available at this time. Please try your call again later. Announcement 1, switch 411.
We really have to mute our phones, people, just as a courtesy. All right.
I always, the minute my phone rang, I mute.
So we understand. I at least hope we agree that in the beginning, the creative form of melanin is what everyone has to align with. In the intervening periods, it's the operative form of melanin that everyone should be aligned with. And at the end of the cycle, it is the destructive form, because this is what is coming, and it's critical, and to me it's very curious and very informative that we are having a problem with this. That we are that when we see Nasik, the end of the oppressor on the horizon, it's a problem. It's a problem.
I don't know why.
I kind of mean that really because of our mental state, we continue to prolong.
Say that again.
Say that again, sister.
I said that this is basically just like a clear example of how, we're so indoctrinated to when we are presented with things that we just ourselves keep us trapped in, basically in this, prolong this whole thing instead of us just like,
Go ahead, Nasik.
Yes, Yvonne. It's a very simple, and every time I say it, I guess people cringe because why do Nasik keep saying the same thing? It's the same thing. Duality is destructive. I don't care how you want to call it. It's destructive. And if we don't come out of duality, there is no way to what? We got to bring an end to it because in duality have to bring an end to it. And then what's what happens? The wholeness, you understand, will give us a chance to live in peace and harmony. We just ain't understanding it. We're just not understanding
it.
My apologies, I got disconnected.
I think this is something that we have to consider. That to me, I don't care how it ends, as long as it ends and there's a finality to the destruction. But it's curious. It's very curious to me that when the subject of destruction comes
up.
I apologize. I got disconnected, so I didn't hear your response to what I was saying.
I was just saying that I was agreeing with what you said, and we have to really give this some thought and some deep consideration, because if we all agree that we are at the very end of this cycle and that what is imminent is the destruction, we have to consider why we are so agitated right now, or why there's such a controversy in terms of considering the destruction of our oppressor.
Eitai, there's a controversy because those who have that controversy hasn't started that destructive process within themselves. That's why Ezekiel 21:27 talk about I will overturn, and I will overturn it. What is that it that you got to overturn? And again, is that ego that we talked about yesterday. And those who haven't gone within themselves to overturn that has the problem with that destructive process, because they haven't started the process within themselves. It's that simple.
I think we have to really go inside and consider and give this thing some serious thought as to why we are apparently struggling with visualizing our oppressor's destruction.
Eitai.
Am I getting it wrong, Nasik? Because
no, I was just thinking about. I guess everybody really didn't read what was said, and you didn't read it, I didn't read it, but maybe I made a mistake. Maybe everybody ain't on the same page when I said, since we all agree that we have identified melanin energy as the source of all life and power, how can we show the demonstration of this melanin power from a prophetic worldview? I made a mistake. Everybody ain't in agreement that if it's going to be melanin power, what difference that's going to be the destructive element? How it happened? Why would we have a problem with it?
I don't know. I don't care how it happens.
I don't either.
Right, me neither.
I'm tired. Let's get it on.
I'm ready. Let's get it done.
I don't care.
I totally agree with all says duality has to cease to exist.
I agree. But I don't care if spaceships come down and they all hand us jawbones of an ass, tell us to go out and do what Samson but dead. I don't care how it ends. And I'm being facetious, but I think again we got to consider now. We got to really consider why we are having why so much friction is being generated and controversy is being generated around imaging, around imagining, just imagining
Right.
the destruction of our oppressor, and the end of oppression.
I know.
Eitai, I was gonna say when we're talking about it's not based upon white people, Asians, and blacks, then when we go into the duality and we stop and we think when we say why we having a problem with, doing away with this oppression that's taking place, maybe it's because we're so much like our oppressors to where we feel like if we destroy our oppressors, we'll destroy ourselves because we won't know what else to do or how to act. We don't have, everyone doesn't have the wherewithal to come out of that paradigm of living like the oppressor or having any other thought pattern. So people become afraid of doing that because then it's like, well, if I destroy my oppressor, I'm going to destroy myself.
Wow.
I was thinking in a little in that order, but in this respect, that you have loved ones that are a part of that, and that's what we have to separate ourselves from that way too, because we're on this team. We have a better understanding. We have ascended to and internalized a better understanding. At least when that comes, and as a whole, we get it. It's a sacrifice, and sometimes we might have to be destroyed if we are in that or clinging to that, or even members of our own biological bloodline. And that's why we have to emotionally and every other way, spiritually, be separated from whatever it is that we're trying to do. Like the general, the represented, the female that was the general, that they called the general.
Okay.
In the picture, we have to be like that for that reason. That unified melanin.
Right. I agree.
Eitai.
Kane.
Yeah, this is to me. Listen, I think that I agree wholeheartedly with what my Abba said and with what the sister said just before, I think it was Mitzvah, and then I go all the way back to what Nasik Aharone had said. I don't think that we have a problem so much with the destruction of our adversary. I mean, with the destruction of this this Babylonian world system. But I think the problem, just like has been previously stated, the problem is the destruction that has to happen within ourselves. When we begin to destroy that mindset that we have been brought up in, i.e. that ego, that is the dwelling place or the source of duality, when we begin to destroy that, I think that's where the problem actually comes in. I'll be the first to say that, coming into this new knowledge is a little uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Destruction is not it's not a comfortable process at all. And I think that, but it's something that we understand from these teachings. It should be understood that this has to be done. And that's where I think the real problem is. I think the problem is, definitely, within.
Definitely. I'll tell you what, this movie has gotten more people talking online. I'll tell you that. That's a great thing. It has sparked a lot of discussion and a lot of interchange. And, and that is a tremendously powerful thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
let me ask a question to everybody to kind of put it in perspective of what Tammy just said. And I was very clear. But again, these prophetic utterances that sometimes we go without, thoroughly considering and understanding what is being said. What do we think Yeshua said to the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Ye by your traditions have made wholeness the word of God null and void and none effect. Because they did not want to deal with that dualistic way of viewing things that they confronted him with, told him he thought he was God and all that stuff. This is the same problem we got today.
Right.
The same problem.
Yeah,
and until
absolutely.
we deal with that, you ain't gonna get nothing. You ain't got nothing coming. And it got to start with each and every one of us. So we got to identify it and got to what? Remove it. Got to kill it.
One thing, what just popped into my mind was this song title by the Rolling Stones. They entitled one of their albums "Sympathy for the Devil." Sympathy for the Devil. And I'm wondering if that sort of thing is present to some degree. Sympathy for the devil. And I want to go to a scripture just very quick for us to consider, because I included this, Nasik, when I considered the prophetic framework that you were talking about, the prophetic perception. And this is in Ezekiel, the 7th chapter and the 10th verse. And it is talking about this time in particular. Violence is risen up into the rod of wickedness. Now, this is what Malkiel had talked about with we can go back to Columbine and with the school shootings. And I remember when there was things going on like this during Malcolm X's time. And he was coining the phrase all day when they were bringing about these horrific events that were coming up. And he would use the term, he incorporated the term, the chickens are coming home to roost. This
Right.
and this corresponds with what David talked about, where the armies would destroy themselves, that there would be a force, a destructive force that would cause individuals to turn, our enemies, our oppressors, to turn on themselves. So again, this violence rising up into the rod of wickedness. It says, none of them shall remain, nor of their multitude, nor any of theirs. And then it makes this statement, neither shall there be wailing for them. Now, does that just mean, and this is where this question comes in, does it just mean the people that are on their side wailing for them, their families and friends? Or does it mean that the people on the other side felt obligated to have what? Sympathy for the devil and weep and wail for them? That the statement would be made, neither shall there be any wailing for them. So I think it's something, I mean, we really have to consider. We really have to go inside and consider. We are right at this pivotal point prophetically that we're close enough to visualize the destruction of this oppressive system and the individuals that manage that oppressive system. And we got to ask ourselves that question. We got to go inside. Do we really want this, Nasik, like you said, to come to an end? Are we there? Why are we having such a problem with this?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Eitai,
Kane.
Eitai,
Yes, sir.
I don't believe that we have so much of a problem as some say, because you answered my question. He answered my question. Our presentation assume that everyone understands what we're teaching or what we're saying. I think sometimes you need to go back, break it down a little bit more, even from the standpoint of destruction. You see, we know that the feminine energy is going to destroy the system that we know today. I don't think nobody has no problem with it being destroyed. You know what I'm saying? But I think sometimes we need to explain things in depth and not assume that everyone understood. And I think sometimes we have to, language is a system, and languages can be very confusing to people. So I think sometimes the simple matter, maybe you can use a word like, this is the age in which patriotic energy will be broken down, or when patriotic energy will be dismantled. You know what I'm saying? Dismantle and destruction are the same words, but they have a whole nother energy. Sometimes, you know,
coming here for lunch.
we just need to break it down a little bit more, because you definitely answered my question. Everything I was getting at, you broke it down and you answered it clearly. So all I'm saying, you did answer my question.
All right. I appreciate that, Kalai.
Let me say that I think if we can use interchangeably, maybe we can, the concept of the black hole along with dark matter and dark energy, because the vortex, the torus has a vortex at its center, and it draws all matter into it until it is full, and then it produces the new age, the new sun. The black hole, the destruction, everything is destroyed by the black hole and brought into all the individual pieces that come in are melded into the one. And when that black hole brings forth a new light, a new sun. So that's certainly destruction right there. Everything comes in and it's destroyed, but it then immediately gets, when it's full, when destruction has reached its fullness. It was interesting to me that I didn't hear anyone, when you said we have such a problem, everybody started talking and nobody talked on behalf of, I'm the one who don't want to see the enemy destroyed. Nobody said that. That's all I got to say.
Thanks, Doug. All right, Nasik, we're going to end it right here. If there are no more